Today we're going to talk about financial planning for professionals and business owners that are preparing for parenthood. Technically, this could apply generally if you're not a professional or you're not a business owner. I just made this with a couple clients I had in mind that recently I had a discussion with, and I figured it would be a great place to share this because I'm at least having a conversation. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is get a baseline of where you are. Review your income, expenses, savings. Just get a baseline, get clarity on your situation from a budget standpoint, because we're going to have a baseline understanding of where you are, because we're going to have to make adjustments. Because with a little person coming into the world, what's going to happen is that you're going to have changes, and part of those changes will be reflected potentially in your financial situation. Okay. Next thing we're going to look at is your lifestyle adjustments. We also have to consider that, okay, if you're a professional business owner, okay, you may be working, you know, plenty of hours. You're committed to your job. So we've got to consider that, right? We've got to consider that, okay, will the business survive without you? How much or how much time are you putting in? Can we get somebody to do something that you're already doing? Are we going to have to hire someone, right? So we kind of step back from a time perspective. We definitely discuss that. And then in addition to that, we start to see where there's discretionary spending and see what will need to happen in terms of changes, because we will have additional child related expenses and potentially we may have lower income. So we start to have that conversation at this point as, okay, where do we have flexibility? Where can we make changes? Where can we make adjustments? There might be some expenses you have that you're no longer going to have. If you used to, if traveling is part of your work, travel part of your business, and you're no longer doing that, well, you may be saving on gases, right? So we may be saving on the gas charges, right? So we're going to make changes to that. Now, once we've kind of get a sense of that, where we have flexibility, the first thing we're going to carve out, if it's not already done, is an emergency fund. We're going to build and maintain a robust emergency fund, usually somewhere around 3 to 6 months expenses, but it all depends on your job, or depends on your business. If you are in a more vulnerable situation and you're experiencing a lot more fluctuation, then we may want to put more aside. Instead of 3 to 6 months, we may want to put 9 months. We may want to put 12 months, depending on your situation. Now, some folks aren't necessarily happy in having their emergency fund sitting in a savings or a high interest account, because they rather have their money working for them. And some people opt to have a line of credit. The challenge is, in these days, if you have to rely on a line of credit, the interest rates can be quite high, at least higher than usual as of the date of this recording. So that may not be the best route. It's definitely more risk involved. Or you could have part of it being high interest savings, and part of it is you have a line of credit that you can rely on if you need to. Again, it's based on your circumstances, based on your situation, but these are things that you would consider. Next thing we're going to look at is your maternity and paternity leave. When are you going to take off? How long are you going to take off? Are you going to be doing it at the same time? Are you going to stagger it? You want to really get a sense of that, because that's going to affect your income. Because with most paternity leaves, what typically happens if you have a drop in income, we had a baseline, but that baseline, when we started, we had a baseline of your income and expenses, but that income may decrease now. In many circumstances, decreases. And so if you have fluctuations, then we have to plan for that, right? And if we are taking off for a particular amount of time, we have to plan for that. And sometimes it's good to give you some cushion, because depending on your job, you may have flexibility. You may say, you know what, I'm only going to take off 10 months. But it so happens that, when we approach the 10 months, we're going to end up taking 12 months if you have that flexibility. Or maybe you're going to take 12 months and it may turn to 18 months. So we just have to have these conversations and build a cushion around it if possible. So we have a sense of, okay, let's see what we're going to do. And in case plan A doesn't work, let's see what plan B we could put in place. Or let's see if a plan C or potentially plan D. All right. So we at least want to be aware for it and plan for it and allow for flexibility. Next thing, as we just said, if you're taking leave, then you're gonna have adjusted income, right? So we've got to plan for that, and your budget's got to reflect that, and your spending's got to reflect that. your potential expenses that you're going to have to have that in mind. And speaking of expenses, the next thing we're going to look at are childcare expenses. You're going to research the cost for the various childcare options that you're going to want, right? So depending on your situation, you may have somebody who's coming over to clean the house, which is not necessarily taking care of the child, but you may be so busy with, with one partner might be busy with work, another has a child, depending on how pregnancy went, you might, if it went well, then you may, be able to do a lot more things. If not so, then you may not, right? And you may need support. So we consider that, we talk about that, we plan for that. And what we do is we look at potentially what these additional childcare expenses are, and we create a budget around that to avoid any type of financial surprises and plan for that, so we at least have that in mind. And sometimes it's just being aware. Again, these are the plan B, plan C type things, because initially you might say, okay, these are the only expenses I can foresee. Well, that's great, and let's put some optional things there just in case, right? So you want to look at all your childcare expenses, research different options, and see what's feasible, what's not feasible, or we may want to come up with a plan A and look at a plan B and plan C where that's concerned. Now, there are certain things you're absolutely going to purchase, right? And absolutely will need, and we want to plan for that. Now, I know sometimes a lot of this is offset by family members who probably recently had a child, or you may have a shower and you have a list of things that you need and they're all given. So that might be helpful to get rid of some of the one-time expenses, but also consider there will be ongoing costs, right? Such as clothing for the child, or just child-related expenses. So you also want to plan that. You want to think about that. And again, you may say, no, I possibly won't need that. But at the same time, just have a plan B just in case. This is the conservative side of me coming in. Just have a plan B just in case, and at least have the discussion. So if worst case scenario, we need to get these additional items, we take the steps to get it done. It's early, but you could start thinking. Some people start thinking about educational planning, or maybe you have a young child now, and you're considering that. And the big part of that is RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan, and it's a great plan. I'm not going to go into details. That requires its own video. But what happens is the government actually provides additional grants and bonds based on your circumstances that are quite favorable for you as a parent. No, a lot of people think only parent can do this. It's not only parent. What you may want to consider is in circumstances where you have family members, grandparents, friends, families who want to provide gifts. Part of it could just, part of what you could say to them is, what, we take education, education is a huge part, very important for us as parents. And instead of buying toys or gifts or whatever the case is, we would rather to fund the child's education. And there's an opportunity there. And so you could start, if people want to give stuff now, you could start putting that aside. And once the child's here, you could put the RESPs in place. Or you could wait till after the child starts and, upcoming birthdays, that's part of it. But you at least want to think about that because educational costs are huge. No. It's one thing to plan for your education for your child, but you should not be sacrificing your retirement savings. We'll talk about retirement savings shortly. But you should not be sacrificing your retirement savings, meaning putting off saving for retirement just for educational planning. And the reason for that is you might just have to undo everything you do with the RESP, meaning you contribute to it, but if you're in such a bad situation, you may need to pull from it, which, wouldn't have been the best thing to happen. So what I always tell parents is that you want to consider putting the mask, just like in an airplane, you put the mask over your face first and then you put it on your child. That's exactly how you should approach planning for your retirement, and you're balancing it with education planning. You want to make sure your retirement savings is taken care of before you start going to before you start taking away from your own retirement savings, put to the education planning. But you could definitely have your family and friends who plan to give gifts or want to do things for birthdays, have the money go towards education planning. That would be a smart thing to do. Next thing you also want to consider life insurance. Because, of course, now you have a child, more responsibility, and heaven forbid if something were to happen to you or your partner, what you would want to have happen is, have enough money put aside that the child will be taken care of for the foreseeable future, and depending on your circumstances, it will cover a certain amount of years, or it may cover a certain amount of years and education. This is conversations that you're going to be having with a professional like myself, who's licensed. So you want to definitely consider insurance. But a lot of times people only consider life insurance. Well, there are other things to consider also. Critical illness and disability illness will, in the foreseeable future, are more likely to happen to you anyway. More likely to get a critical illness, or you're more likely to have a disability. And so what you want to do is you want to consider life, critical, and disability. If you already have coverage, you may have sufficient, or you may have a shortfall. You need to increase the amounts you have. But you want to at least take a look at that, because you want to protect your family, that heaven forbid an emergency were to happen, they are taken care of. Estate planning. If you haven't done it yet, you definitely want to think about having a will. You want to designate your guardians. Heaven forbid if something were to happen, who would be taking care of your child or children, if you have more than one, or if you happen to have twins or triplets. You get a point. You also want to have a power of attorney. Heaven forbid something were to happen to you, who's going to make a decision on your behalf, or both your part, you and your partner were injured, for example, in an accident, who would take care of children. In certain circumstances, you may want to consider a trust. But basically, you want to consider estate planning. This is where you're going to have a conversation, of course, with a lawyer preferably whose part of their specialty is estate planning. Just so you have a person who is an expert and knows what they're doing. But you definitely want to review your estate planning stuff. From a tax standpoint, there are tax credits and deductions that come with being a parent, and you absolutely want to maximize that. And depending on how you're filing taxes, if you're doing it yourself or you have your professional, you want to inform them, hey, your circumstances change, and so what will need to happen is our filing will also change, right? So you want to look at tax implications and make some tweaks there if there are opportunities to save on tax. And of course, retirement planning. You're still planning for the future. We have a little person here, and things maybe shift, and the dynamics maybe shift. And you want to revisit your financial plans here, because you probably had a plan before, and it considered maybe, but not fully considered having a child. Well, now that the child's in the picture, you definitely want to plan for that. And again, you want to prioritize retirement planning and have it be part of the foundations of your plan, and definitely not sacrifice it for education. And I've seen that often. You want to consider retirement planning. And overall, again, like I just said, if you already have a plan in place, you want to step back, know that you have a child. A lot of things may change. Your financial goals may change. I find that when parents get a child, a lot more focus around their immediate future and their financial goals, is based on, or at least thinks, it's focused a lot more on the child than before. Before you go, yeah, when I have a child, this is what I think we will do. But now that the child is here, what typically happens is you really make certain tweaks and make certain changes in financial plan. And so you need to update your plan. You need to revisit your goals. And if you're revisiting your goals, there's usually a financial component to that. So you definitely want to make changes based on your family situation. Financial communication. I often say, as a financial planner, there's a coaching aspect of it. You want to have open communication here. With a new child, again, things shift. One partner, one part of the half of the couple will say, I think we should still be doing this or looking at this trip. And then the other spouse, well, no, we could put it on the back burner and really focus on our child. And this is where you're going to have the conversations, have the open communications, and really get on the same page and aligned. I always look at couples as a business. It's almost like a business, something new happens, and as partners, you sit down and you go, okay, now we have these changes. What's our mission, vision, and how are we going to do this? And so look at yourself as a family Inc., family incorporated, and go, okay, we have this new addition to our business, and how does this affect the dynamics, right? So essentially, the bottom line is you want to have communication. Things may change. You want to make sure you're aligned in the decisions you're making as you go forward, right? So having communication is a huge part of it, and just being aligned and being on the same page. It's so much better than when you have one spouse saying one thing and the other spouse saying another. That doesn't make for efficient use of time and money and everything else. Definitely want to seek a professional advice. You definitely want to seek a professional and get professional advice. Consult with a financial planner. Consult with myself, or if you have a financial planner, speak with a financial planner. If you have a few folks in mind, definitely want to reach out to them. I always recommend a financial plan based on life changes, which are circumstances like this, having a child, pretty huge life changes. Well, hopefully this was helpful. And if you do find it helpful, like, share, and subscribe. And I also invite you to share this with someone you know who's about to have a child, or maybe just had a child recently, or just a young couple. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful. Thank you all, and I will catch you on the next video.